before we get into it, very, very quick plug. If you want to help support the podcast and get a better browser experience that's quicker than Chrome and Internet Explorer and all the standard ones, and doesn't treat you like a product, download Brave web browser today at brave.com/pep424. Check out their website. They'll go into way better detail about how they improve your browser experience and don't do dodgy stuff like tracking you and your data. So yeah, check that out. And there we are. Yeah, I hope you enjoy the podcast. Hello and welcome to the Peppermint Philosophy podcast. I'm your host Adam Burgess, and I'm joined today with my mate Toby.
Hello everyone.
Today me and Toby are going to be discussing the topic of I guess gurus and like the teachings that they have and all that kind of really woo-woo stuff, because me and Toby, I feel like we've taken a bit of an interest in these types of characters. I don't know if we'll start actually probably with so what is it about gurus that you find so interesting?
I don't know. I feel like they have some interesting ideas to offer people that can actually help people with their lives. But then I know that they get seen nowadays like some sort of modern day messiah, and I'm just interested about the type of influence they have, why they have this influence, is it justified, and can we sort of criticize them in some ways for perhaps not being morally sound?
Right. Yeah, no, I think, yeah, definitely have a lot of crossover there, because I mean, you know, with all of these gurus and stuff, it's very easy, I think, these days for a lot of us to be like, you know, kind of look down on them or look down at people who follow them. But actually, sometimes, I mean, when you listen to some of the things that they say, it is quite, I don't know, it's motivational. It like can really like bring you some sort of, I suppose, solace that a lot of this sort of, you know, the real world, I suppose we'll call it, just doesn't really give you in the same way. I mean, I don't know, I find it can be quite comforting listening to people like Muji and Eckhart Tolle sometimes.
Yeah, I feel like as well they offer like a different perspective on things to what we only can sense with our sense perceptions. I feel like there has to be a deeper level to life in general, but we get caught up in the mundane every day. We don't really have time to explore that sort of, I don't know, deeper sense to life. So I feel like that's part of the attraction, knowing that there's more than just what we can sense with our own sense perceptions every day.
Right. Do you think that we are living in kind of the society where we, I guess, are almost detached from that kind of spirituality and that kind of like practice of being present and being aware of, I suppose, I mean, your spiritual self, I suppose?
Yeah, I think in modern day society we don't really pay that much attention to the spiritual side. We're sort of caught up in what's coming next in our own lives, but not on a spiritual level. Just when's the next paycheck coming in? What am I doing tomorrow? What do I need to do here? It's just this constant process of what am I doing next? And you don't really stop to think about what's happening, and before you realize time's passed you by pretty quickly. So I think it's best to stop sometimes and just, you know, get to know yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And so I guess before we sort of go into the more sort of like, I suppose, controversial questions surrounding this topic, what aspects of it do you find quite useful, and what kind of things have you tried?
Well, at the start of lockdown, obviously I had a lot of free time because I had literally nothing to do. I was teaching abroad and that had been called off, so I thought I'd try and explore some new things. I had a go at the Wim Hof method, which I'm sure you're aware of. Are you?
No, I'm not. I'm actually
I
not.
know.
No.
Okay, well, he has various breathing techniques which he advocates as sort of, I don't know, enhancing your spirituality, or and cold showers as well. So I mean, the breathing techniques, they were okay, but I didn't stick with them. The only thing that I really kept doing for that was the cold showers, because I'm not really a morning person, and I tried it out and it helped me quite a lot to wake up in the morning. So
Yeah.
I've
No,
stuck with that.
I can definitely understand that. So, I mean, I think where we've had conversations about this, a lot of it has been due to lockdown, and I think, it's been what, fuck, I can't even remember, like 7 months, 8 months almost. And yeah, I feel like during it, you go through these bouts of like feeling really, I don't want to necessarily say depressed, but it does get towards being depressed, and I think a lot of us were looking for ways to, I guess, spend time coping with it better, and a lot of us were doing exercise and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I found doing doing like yoga, and like especially like breathing yoga, so stuff like Kundalini yoga was something that I started to do more of. And of course then listening also to a lot more of these sorts of spiritual leaning teachers and things like that, more to just sort of, I suppose, give me that motivation, give me that presence where I mean it's important to, I think, sit and breathe and just spend some time with yourself and figure it out, and taking on these little daily practices that you can move forward with can always be helpful. But no, I've never heard of that. I mean, is it sounds like a lot of these things can be quite similar between these different teachers. So there's like
Yeah.
meditation, breath work, even cold showers and stuff like that. Did any of them really do any of them stick aside from the cold showers, or is it?
I feel like meditation as well does help you you feel more peaceful, and I don't know, I feel like it does something for you. I don't know what it is, but just a general sense of well-being, and I think it's something perhaps probably more people would benefit if they were to incorporate it in their lives.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that there is there's I know what you mean. There's something to a lot of these practices, and whether or not, I guess the question that I always have, and I think where a lot of our conversations have leaned towards is potentially how much of it is, as because a lot of it's tied to this sort of very spiritual side of it, and I think a lot of people can look on that and just be a bit like, oh, that's just kind of weird. That's, it's just bizarre kind of spirituality stuff. There's something kind of odd to it, and it's not grounded in that kind of like realism. I think a lot of us.
Well, it's easy to be dismissive of things that seem unusual or strange to you, I think. But I think the key is to keep an open mind to these things, because no one really has the answers. We're all born, we're all die, we're all human. No, I don't think anyone has the answers. You just have to try and figure them out for yourself. And I think the best way to figure out these answers is to try and stay as open as you can to as many different things as possible, and only dismiss them once you're sure or you've tried it out for yourself.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think, to be honest, that's been something I've been trying to embody a bit more and try and like take forward, is being more open-minded to these things, listening to these discussions, these lectures, these conversations. I love it when these people go on to podcasts and stuff, so that you can listen to them talk about, their methods, whatever it might be, even the origins to how they ended up becoming one of these teachers or gurus, or whatever you want to call it. And it's interesting because I think most of it stems from these moments of, in a lot of cases, like serious depression, self-hatred, all of these kinds of things seem to come along with it. And then through that struggling, through that suffering, find some kind of I don't want to say meaning, but like, you find a way through that, and through these practices, through these things, they can really help. And I think there's definitely something to that
Yeah, I mean that's
aspect.
the thing they have in common. Most of them seem to hit rock bottom before they go up and realize these things. I don't know how, but I mean not everyone who hits rock bottom ends up like them. So I don't know what it is that sort of produces that instant transformation, or I don't know if it's even if it's instant, but
Mm.
it'd be interesting to know what happened from this person being at rock bottom, not seeing a way out, and then suddenly becoming, I guess, in a sense, enlightened, or I just, yeah, like you said, maybe seeing meaning to things that
Mm.
they hadn't seen beforehand. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess something, because something I've been sort of juggling around a little bit in my own sort of thoughts, and in journaling and stuff, is the aspect of suffering, and how, I don't know, I feel that suffering, in some ways, we can almost use suffering as being like this league table of like people suffer more than other people, and all of that kind of stuff, and you see it flung around a lot, in conversations online and stuff, about how people are privileged or whatever it might be. And to an extent that is true, and there is definitely aspects of privilege, and things like that. But I also think that we need to bear in mind that suffering is also relative, and so it's possible to even have like a really privileged upbringing, one which supposedly get everything you want, and because that's your base level, you can still suffer as a result. And I think I was listening to, I think it was Miley Cyrus,
Okay.
talking about her. Yeah, but it was like she was talking about her childhood, and how it was like
Yeah.
actually really fucked up, because she was pretty much famous, from the day she was born. She was born into fame. Her dad was a famous singer, and then she was on this TV show from like 12 years old, and basically it really fucked her up. And she was talking about how it's a really fucked up upbringing, and how she did have everything, but still that's meant that she's been searching for other stuff and additional meaning, or whatever it might be. And I think it's always interesting, because I think that kind of aspect of suffering can really like bring us all together, because we all kind of understand it, but it manifests in different ways. And I think trying to master and accept that suffering can really help. And I think a lot of these types of teachings and exercises can really help with that kind of stuff. It was a bit of a tangent, that, but
Yeah, I think a lot of it is influenced by someone's perspective on something, and maybe the goal of these spiritual teachers is to try and, yeah, change the way you see things, change your perspective. Maybe your perspective on things is what brings suffering. Not all the
mm,
time, but to a certain extent.
yeah, now it can certainly be a really powerful sort of, I guess, manifester of these demons. But you kind of mentioned it earlier. You were describing some of these teachers as being sort of enlightened, I guess, and it's a term which is thrown around a lot with these people. I'm a little bit skeptical of it, because I'm not entirely sure what it means. It's like it's one of these terms that we hear, but we all have a different interpretation of what the meaning is. What would you say an enlightened being is? Someone who is enlightened in this way, that has seen or learned some sort of method to cope better with suffering.
I don't know. That's a hard question. Maybe someone who's detached. Well, what Eckhart would say is someone who's detached from their ego, or
Mm,
detached from their thoughts, and not sort of yeah, not really influenced by their thoughts, but by being present. I don't know,
mm,
it's hard to say. It's what.
yeah. No, I think that's definitely the case, because I mean, whenever I hear the term, I'm always a bit confused by it, because you hear Russell Brand or Duncan Trussell or anyone throwing around this term like enlightened being, these enlightened beings, and even some of these teachers, Muji and Eckhart Tolle, and oh, what's his face, um, Ramdas and stuff like that. They throw around this term, But maybe it's just because I haven't really looked into it enough or tried to understand it better. But I find the term enlightened being quite confusing, because to me it has very clear sort of connotations. It's very much like a spiritual enlightenment, and this kind of idea of, I don't know, there's something almost angelic or divine about it in my brain. But maybe that's just because of my upbringing and my own perception of it. But really, it possibly could be something way simpler. And again, like this, I think I like your idea better, where it's a detachment from ego, which I
What
think.
was that?
Sorry.
Sorry, your volume was breaking up there.
Oh, sorry
Could
about
you
that.
repeat that?
Yeah, no,
It's
sorry.
okay.
I was saying, I like your sort of definition, where it's, or your idea, where it's more of a detachment from the ego, which I think is something which is discussed quite a lot in philosophy and religion, where it's, this idea of trying to get your ego under control is very much a common thing in Stoicism. But then also in different religions, you've got, so I think in Hinduism there was a story of uh oh, I can't remember the name of the story, but it's the one with the Monkey King.
Oh yeah, I think
Um
I heard that one somewhere.
yeah, but I
Um,
think his whole thing is what he helped Rama, I think it was, in the final battle to save his betrothed. And when Rama said, I'll grant you anything, essentially what the Monkey King said was, please, make me separate from my ego, essentially. And it's this sort of pursuit of enlightenment, I guess, and trying to be totally selfless if possible. I think it's a recurring theme. I mean, how, you personally, do you feel that most of these teachers who say that, or who might be described as enlightened, do you think that they are totally detached from their egos?
um, I don't know. If they're not, they're doing a good job pretending they are because they have a lot of followers. They're making a shed load of money. I don't know if that goes against their moral principles or moral principles of what it is to be enlightened or a spiritual leader. I don't know. That's that's a controversial topic, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like a lot of them are just repackaging things that have already been said in the past, but saying it in a different way or saying it in many different ways to produce as much content as possible, which can be monetized. But I wouldn't go as far as saying, oh, they're just doing it for the money. I feel like some of these people have genuine things that they can teach that will benefit a lot of other people, but it's about identifying what here is really beneficial, what here is a bit, I don't know how to say it, a bit rubbish, a bit,
Well,
yeah.
I think it does get onto one of those like really sort of difficult topics, because I quite like listening to some of these people. I think that they have good things to say.
Mhm.
It's,
Yeah, I agree.
you can find these positions where it's just having someone give you that reassurance can be very comforting. And they're speaking sound logic a lot of the time, and like you said, it can be stuff which maybe has just been repackaged or retold from different philosophies, different religious texts, and it's just
Hmm.
being delivered in and packaged in a way that's clearer or easier to follow. And to an extent, I guess that raises the question of is it that it is a universal wisdom? Is that why they always have the same kinds of themes and topics and approaches? Is it because it's a universal wisdom, or is it because they've kind of tapped into this really effective way of communicating this wisdom and then essentially monetizing it? And that's where we get onto the more sort of dark side of it, I suppose.
Hmm.
Because I mean, I think we've started to have these conversations. How much of it do you think is that, they end up finding a very lucrative way of making money from this kind of stuff?
Well, I think it's, it might be sad to think it, but I think a lot of it might be due to that because they are making a lot of money. They're charging a lot of money for events they put on, and I don't know. I don't see them. I don't know if we should be the ones to tell them, oh, you should be giving the money away to charity, but something sort of makes you feel, I don't know, strange when you see a preacher of sort of messages of enlightenment making a shed load of money, telling you to detach from your ego whilst their ego may be being enhanced through that money. I don't know. I know a lot of them are millionaires, and it seems slightly morally corrupt, but
Yeah, it certainly brings up that yeah, like you said, it is just you always feel uncomfortable when someone who is preaching a good message is making a lot of money on the side. I mean, I think that's been a fairly universal trait for a lot of spiritual practices. So, even when the Catholic Church was, making tons and tons of money and lavishing themselves in gold and stuff, and you had the Franciscans come along who were offering more of a message of essentially being with poverty instead, and that's how you should be preaching. And those questions, I suppose, have always, or those conflicts have always been a part of this kind of spiritual discussion. But I remember, I think you pointed out a while ago about how a lot of the tickets to these talks that they do are, it's a lot of money per seat, and they're making, tens of thousands of dollars per event, or probably even more. And it does make you wonder how much. I mean, I don't know what they're using that money for, and I think this is the caveat: is that maybe they are using it for good reasons. They are offering things, but again, I have no way of knowing that. Neither do you. Neither, maybe if we dug into it a bit more, we could find out. But it does seem a bit. I don't know. It doesn't sit well with me. Or I mean, I don't know about you. What's your thoughts generally on it?
no, I think it just feels a bit iffy when they're preaching it, and you're like, you want to buy into something, but then you know off the back of this video, off the back of a shed load of money. Yeah, I think I did read something, or I saw something once where Eckhart was asked a question by an audience member about money, and he said something like, "Oh, I don't really think of it. The only way my life has changed is that I have a slightly bigger house." Okay, and that's fine saying, okay, I'm not actively thinking about the money, but that doesn't take away from the fact that you're still making a shed load of money. You're still a multi-millionaire. Yeah.
Right, and it's because it's one of these things. I remember there's one guy who I like to listen to called Alan Watts, and he's passed away now, but he did a lot of work where it was looking at Eastern philosophies and translating them for a Western audience. So back in like the 60s and 70s, he brought a lot of the Buddhist and Taoist sort of religious teachings and stuff, translated them for a Western audience. And he did these really entertaining talks, and I find that a lot of them are very uplifting. They show you a great perspective, and there were some great sort of like mental experiments that he offers on their thought experiments rather, that were really engaging and very interesting. And I love listening to them. I remember there was one though that he talks about, again, when they talk about money, they often talk about it in the same way, and that it's like, oh, we give value to this thing, it doesn't make sense, blah blah. And But then you're thinking also, how much money were they all making whilst preaching those messages about, not, doing away with money? It doesn't have any real value. And it's not to say that those points aren't true, but when you're also making quite a lot of money on the side with that, it does raise questions of how easy it can be sometimes to, I suppose, not lose sight of your message, but almost forget parts of it when you're in quite a comfortable position and you are making money quite easily. It seems, my concern is that it becomes too easy to just forget about the people who are following you, some of whom might be incredibly poor by comparison.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, to believe a lot of the things that these gurus say, you have to, in order to buy into the messages, you have to buy into the person as well.
Yeah.
And if somebody is making a shed load of money in the background, I don't know, it makes, personally, I find it harder to buy into the person if I know it sort of conflicts with their teachings.
Yeah. And do you think a lot of the followers don't really consider that?
I think they turn a blind eye to it on purpose. They probably know in the back of their mind that is what's going on, but maybe they're trying to, I think they just turn a blind eye to it, so to say.
Yeah, because to an extent, I think I've done the same, where it's like when you pointed that out, it gave me a moment to pause and think, actually, because I was listening to all this stuff about people talking about Ram Dass and how amazing he was, and a lot of these teachings where I was like, yeah, these are really good. I was listening to a lot of the lectures, I was listening to a lot of the talks, and I was like finding value in it. And when you pointed that out, I was a little bit like, I know that all of these, because all of their retreats and stuff are all in like Hawaii and like really far off places, which are, these beautiful places, but they're very expensive and difficult to get to sometimes. And so it must cost an arm and a leg to even be able to get to these retreats and take part in these, these supposedly healing experiences or whatever it might be. And it does make you worry or, wonder about the motivation and almost to some extent question the validity of the teachings. Do you find that?
Yeah, I mean, if it's just spirituality that's geared towards the middle or upper class who have enough money to actually pay to attend these lectures, then I guess it just becomes harder to believe. Although on the other hand, they do put a lot of free stuff online.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to say what their motivations are, if they're genuine or not, or if they're just repackaging an old message to make a lot of money because they know it will sell if they deliver it in a way, like you said earlier, a way that people can access it more easily. But I don't think you can dismiss everything as saying, because I think they are, even though they're just repackaging stuff a lot of the time, I think it could be a lot of this stuff actually comes from, well, what we think are genuine sources or reputable places. So I think the messages are still useful, and I think a lot of people find use in some of the things that these gurus preach and adapt it into their lives and find genuine usefulness in it. But on the other hand, you shouldn't 100% just blindly follow someone. You should always try and maintain an air of criticism.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of these things where it's they definitely have some value to them. I think the words that they say, again, like you said, even if they are repackaged, you can if you resonate with it, that's surely the most important thing. If you gain value from it, does it matter really if the motivation of the person is good or bad? I mean, if you gain something and you go gain something good from it, you can learn a lesson from someone who's done something horrible. If the lesson you take away from that is a good lesson, then yeah, I mean, is it all bad, I suppose?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things, I suppose, moving more down this vein, that I suppose it's another question that I've been considering with regards to this, is the power dynamic between the guru and the followers, and how a lot of the time these gurus can end up in really trusted positions where, followers will literally just be, following them around and listening to their talks and having idolizing them as this teacher, and in some cases as divine teachers. And when you have that kind of power dynamic, it becomes way too easy for them to take advantage of that. And I was watching a Netflix documentary series called Unwell, and it follows a series of different sort of wellness trends and looking at the sort of validity of them and the less valid statements made about them, and just trying to assess things on like from a holistic position rather than one side or the other. And one of the episodes was about tantra, which is, I didn't know anything about this. Apparently it's some sort of I guess sexual healing thing, and so already it's kind of got this connotation of being quite something that can be taken advantage of by someone who's using this position of power. And there were a series of male and female practitioners, and one of the gurus, I suppose, who was teaching this at one of the retreats, he basically took advantage of it and raped a woman who had him in this trusted position. And one of my concerns with, it's almost this kind of stereotype of these types of, like, especially from like the 60s and stuff like that, where you had these sort of hippies following these gurus, and then they were basically kind of leading sex cults and weird stuff like that because they basically took advantage of the fact that people idolize them in this way. Do you worry that things like that kind of are still going on, or do you think that's kind of something that was from a bygone era?
It's probably still going on. We probably just don't hear about it as much. I think the problem is when people get really desperate, they're looking for answers, and they see someone who they think can deliver them the answer they've been looking for so long, or they're so desperate to find, they just buy into that person 100%. They'll do anything what they say because this person has become some sort of demi of them. So it is, I think, some people are unable to maintain an open mind, I guess, as in you always have to look at the critical aspect of something, not just follow your feelings or emotions. You have to, a lot of these people lose the ability to logically process what is going on here because they're just so desperate to find some sort of answer to whatever problem they're facing,
Yeah.
So that's where the power aspect comes into it.
Yeah, definitely. I think because one of the concerns I have always is that, when it comes to these kinds of questions of power dynamics, it's easy from the outside looking in to see where it went wrong and how obvious it was. But when you're in those power dynamics, it becomes a lot more difficult to detach. So especially when you've got things, when you're trusting of people that maybe don't deserve your trust and things like that, it's very, very easy for it to go wrong very quickly. And I think sometimes we can lose sight of the fact that actually when you're in that position, it's very difficult. But I suppose that isn't all of these teachers. That can't be said for all of them. Of course, there are going to be bad, false gurus, I suppose. People who will take advantage of their positions. I'm always concerned about this kind of like, the whole aspect of power corrupts, absolutely, and all of that. And often when money's involved as well, it's quite easy for people to change and do things differently and almost justify it. And I guess that's my sort of general concern with these sorts of spiritual leaders.
I think me and you, though, we can maintain a level of openness, but not, fall into something 100%. We are better at seeing the balanced view and being able to criticize something. Whereas, I don't know, some people, as I said earlier, for people who are desperate to find some sort of answer to something, they're more likely to fall into that trap of, buying into someone who may not have the best of intentions just because they seem to offer some sort of solution to all their problems.
Yeah. I think it's important to always try and keep that kind of balanced perspective as best you can on it, because there are with a lot of these things, like, and whenever I've sort of discussed them with mates of mine, I've started calling it like woo-woo stuff. There is value to it, and it's like, we can, of course, there's all like the crystal healing and all this sort of stuff, but I mean, when it comes to, Kundalini yoga is the big one that I've kind of been getting into. I mean, admittedly, I go through like peaks and troughs of like doing it actively, but it's mostly just sort of 10-minute breathing exercises and stuff like that, where I just, you're holding these poses, doing movements. And of course, the people who are practicing it and demonstrating it will say stuff like, oh, yes, this is an immune boosting thing. And I'm like, whatever. But
you can't get coronavirus anymore.
Well, that's it. That was always the little kind of like bit of me, which is like, is it okay to be saying that? Because all of these videos were popping up like immune boosting Kundalini, and I was like, ugh. I mean, I know that that's not what it's doing, and I'm not going to pretend like that's going to make me immune to diseases or whatever. But what the value I get from it is that it's just like with Tai Chi or with meditation in general, like, it's an amount of time where you just reserve for yourself to breathe, pause, be just with yourself in silence, doing some sort of breathing exercise or something like that to focus in, and then just sort of, it does clear your mind, it does wake you up, it does almost get you ready for the day. And whether there's something spiritual to that, and the spirituality aspect of it, I think comes from, a lot of it comes from like Hinduism and Buddhism, where there is this religious practice to it, and it is, they have ways of describing these things in a religious context, which I always, I'm open to that kind of stuff. I know other people aren't, but they can, you can logic your own, reason for it waking you up, more oxygen, whatever it might be, it doesn't have to have these connotations with it if you don't want it to.
Yeah. I mean, what you're doing is good. I mean, you're trying it out for yourself, just seeing if it benefits you in any way. Adapting it into your life, I think a lot of the time, perhaps this person who's teaching you this Kundalini is overemphasizing the benefits to try and reach more people, and perhaps it's a monetary thing again to try and make a living off it. But that's what I think, that's the case. It's just, there are benefits to it, but a lot of the time it's overemphasized, and
it's a little bit of showmanship as well, I think. So what kind of I suppose what kind of well, not necessarily spiritual, but what kind of aspects do you take from it? Are there any specific teachers or practices aside from the sort of cold showering and other stuff?
Um, yeah, I do. I do some, I guess, what light meditation. It won't be too long, but just something that just, I guess, brings you back to yourself, and then you just feel like, I guess maybe it's a bit like waking up from a sleep after you're done meditation. You feel refreshed again, and yeah, it's just sort of wiping the slate clean and then getting on with your day in a better way, I guess.
Mm,
It's just relaxing as well.
yeah. Now I don't know. I mean, this might end up sounding a little bit Joe Rogan-y, but one of the things with a lot of these practices, so meditation, Kundalini, there's also almost this kind of other aspect to it, which I think is the more spiritual, where you kind of can go into like trances and stuff and experience kind of that. I think this is why a lot of people associate it with spirituality, is because it in some ways can activate um, almost like DMT experiences. That's how people have described it in things that I've listened to. Have you ever come across or achieved anything close to that?
Um, hmm, that's a good question. I don't know. Do you think a lot of people are searching for DMT-like experiences? Do you think that's a motivation behind meditation or
I
Kundalini?
mean, if I'm completely honest, there, there was a certain curiosity for my own getting involved in it. Like I've certainly heard these stories about how Kundalini can because there's so much focus on like the third eye aspect, and which is essentially your pineal gland, which is involved with dreaming. And so I mean obviously yes, for me I was a little bit like, oh, I'm a bit curious about that. Maybe in the back
Mhm.
of my head I'm like, yeah, that would be cool to experience something weird and
Yeah,
that I can't
I guess.
explain.
I feel like that is definitely part of the motivation for me as well, just to have some sort of like, I guess deeper experience. I mean, going back to your previous question, have I ever experienced something like that? I guess on a couple of occasions. I don't know if it was been just because it was late at night, but a lot of the time I will just maybe do 10 or 20 minutes. Maybe if I do a 20-minute at late at night, at some points you get to a stage where I don't know how to describe it. It's just they feel like they're really distant from you. Um, yeah, I guess things feel like they're zooming out, but
Mm.
you're staying where you are. But I don't know if that's because I'm doing it late at night, or it doesn't happen all the time, but just on a couple of occasions for maybe 20 to 30 seconds, you just feel like things have suddenly zoomed out and you're still there. It's a strange sensation. I don't know what it
Sounds
was.
kind of wild. I because like yeah, I mean again, I won't lie. That was a part of the motivation, I suppose. I mean, I think it's because I don't know about you, but I'm seeking. I do want to seek some kind of deeper spiritual connection to things. Like you
Hmm.
hear all these philosophers and religions talking about God and the universe and how we're all connected and all of this sort of stuff. And you kind of wonder, is there something to that? Is there something to ancient religions? Is there something to this kind of aspect of through discipline and keeping to these sorts of spiritual pursuits, you can achieve some form of awakening and understanding? I think that's kind of, again, where some of these gurus can be really or they can pique your curiosity, is because they describe
Yeah,
them as these enlightened beings, and they describe these aspects of enlightenment, which do sound really appealing. It raises this kind of thing of maybe there's more to the universe, more to the meaning of life, and that we can achieve that with these kinds of practices. So, I mean, and maybe because that's a motivation in part, I won't achieve that. But I can't deny it. It is something that I'm interested and hopeful, I suppose, that I'll have. I mean, I probably
Uh-huh.
won't, but
Well, I definitely feel like there's a deeper level than the mundane 9 to 5 day job, and I feel like it's up to us to try out different practices to try and reach that deeper level, so to say. Or yeah, but I feel like for me as well, that the motivation to experience something deeper, or I don't know how to, if I want to say trippy, but something different, you know. I'm not talking about DMT trips, but
I fucking am.
you don't want to get trapped in some weird state.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It's something, you know, when you hear,
Curiosity, yeah,
yeah,
curiosity.
I'm definitely curious about it. And it's like, what if there is more to, I don't want to say a rational explanation for these spiritual experiences, but what if that's kind of what people were experiencing, and they got this idea of God and this idea of angels and even demons and stuff from these kinds of weird experiences, whatever they might be. And it's like
Mm.
maybe there is something, interesting to pursue in that. And I don't know, maybe that's just my personality coming through, and that I'm a little bit, maybe that motivates me a little bit too much. But what I'd say is, in the pursuit of those things, let's say, I think I've gained more from, and not to say that I think that Kundalini or any of meditation or anything has solved loads of problems in my life. I'm not going to say it's like some sort of wonder thing, but I think that there is something to just taking 10, 20 minutes to just stop, pause, and just breathe. And like that, if even if I don't get those, enlightened states, let's call it, from any of this, I mean, I do enjoy the practice of it. I do like the way it makes me feel. And I do think
Yeah,
that it helps with my breathing and stuff like that. And yeah,
yeah,
it's
definitely
sorry.
grounds you more in the moment. I think
Yeah.
feel more grounded when you're in such a state, or even just after having meditated. So I feel like yeah, you're not gonna do any damage by pursuing these practices. If anything, you'll gain some benefits that you can implement into your life, even if you don't eventually achieve your ultimate aim of DMT experience. But
Shit. Now everyone listening to this is gonna know I'm fucking Joe Rogan copycat.
it's okay. You can edit that out.
Nah. So what? I know that you went through a stage briefly of like just trying random stuff. Were there any sort of interesting ones that you tried which kind of stuck with you, or were they all just a little bit like, nah? I mean, I'm glad I tried it, but I won't be doing
Uh,
that again.
I don't think I tried that much. It was mainly during lockdown, but I thought I try and build up some good habits during lockdown. So I got into running more. I
Mm.
doubled my running distance, and I was running, yeah, a lot more times a week. Yeah, I think I felt better just for doing that as well. But yeah, just something to keep my mind occupied as well, because I didn't really have that much to do. I had a bit of preparation for uni and stuff, but um, yeah, I think first of all started off with the cold showers and the breathing technique. Um, the breathing technique, I stuck with it for a bit. I feel like the main effect of that was just feeling slightly lightheaded, and but being able to hold your breath for a really long time. So if that sort of interests you, then maybe you could pursue that.
That sounds like a drug. So what kind of breathing techniques was it? Was it like just holding your breath, releasing all your breath and stuff like that?
It was
Or,
like hyperventilating for maybe a count of 45 or something, and
oh,
then you'd hold your breath for you could hold your breath for a minute or 2 minutes, because that process of hyperventilating, well, when I say hyperventilate, I just mean like taking a really deep breath in and out, but consecutively, really quickly. Um,
oh, okay.
yeah, I don't know if you,
I think I might have heard someone talking about that.
yeah,
Just as a in case anyone listening is going to try this, just a disclaimer, yeah. Don't knock yourself out. But no, I
yeah,
mean, because I know that in Kundalini there is like a thing called breath of fire, which is kind of like you're breathing in and out really, really quickly, but I suppose it's more like panting. Um, but no, I definitely I get where you're coming from with the sort of like lightheadedness and like
yeah,
how you can get those sort of weird moments of where afterwards when you're breathing in more deeply it then like hits you, and they'll call it like the energy flowing through your body or whatever, but
yeah.
you
Well,
know it's just
it's for lightheadedness, and then your body's like tingling as well.
yeah.
The whole of your body is slightly numb and tingling, and I guess for some people that's an appealing sensation to have.
Mm.
Um, I mean, it was an interesting experience, I guess, but it's just something I didn't decide to continue with because I couldn't see too much benefit in it. But I guess for other people, maybe they do gain a lot of benefit from it.
Oh yeah, that's it. I think again you kind of have to just play the field a little bit and see what sticks, and if something does help you, or if it's even if it's like more a case of if it's something that can fit into your day, I think is another aspect that can help. But I mean, there's tons of stuff out there. I guess
Hmm.
yeah. If you hear that I've died from hyperventilation,
Yeah.
you'll know what I was up to.
I've taken the responsibility if that
Yeah.
happens to you.
Shit. Well,
Don't- don't-
was there anything that you wanted to like bring up or talk to me about? Because I think I've covered most of my questions.
Um, well, I made some bullet points, but I think we covered pretty much all of them. I think, yeah, a lot of the messages of spiritual teachers, sort of main things they preach have been repackaged, but
Mm.
can still be useful. But I think to sum it up, a lot of it can be taught as a detachment. Yeah, can be summarized as teaching a detachment from the ego, or sort of an absence of thinking, and not sort of identifying with your thoughts too much. And I think those are key points that they sort of repeat in different ways and
Yeah.
make a lot of videos on about it. And yeah, I wrote down as a question, why do people seek spiritual leaders? But I guess people are curious. People are curious by nature. They want to. If they feel like there's a deeper meaning to something, they'll seek it. But then, yeah, a lot of people who are desperate just are looking for answers, and that's where the
Mm.
vulnerability aspect comes into it. Um,
Do you think so? Speaking on that, actually, do you think there's an aspect of people looking for, in the search for a teacher, do you think that they're looking for someone to save them?
I think it's different for different people. I think a lot of it is just normal people with, I don't know, they just, because no one really knows why we're alive. It's just it's sort of this strange coincidence that we sort of have, are just sort of taught to accept as normal, and then.
Mm.
But if you think about it, it's a very strange concept that we have evolved to this level. We've sort of built up a society where we go to school, get a job, live till old age, retire, die, but we don't give. But we probably have the ability to think about things on much deeper level, but we don't explore that level. We get caught up in the mundane and everyday 9 to 5 things of it, when I feel like maybe we're missing out on the opportunity to go deeper.
Yeah.
Because I think we have such a great like brain capacity, but we're not utilizing it really. I don't know. Do you know how much it is? How much percent of our brain we use?
Shit, I don't know. I feel like I've heard like 10%.
Yeah, I've heard like 10% as well.
We'll just go with that.
Imagine 100%. You'll be DMT tripping every day.
Shit. That's the point I want to reach.
When I next meet you, I just look into your eyes, but you won't be there. You'll just be on some trip.
One long trip.
But the real Adam will be lost in the vortex or the Matrix or something.
Fuck. God, everyone's gonna think I'm a druggie.
Just edit out all this stuff when we talk about DMT. No one will ever know.
So, because one thing I'm kind of interested in is like this. I feel that it's interesting because I think in a lot of aspects of our lives, we're looking for individuals to solve problems for us, and so I think often when we're looking for leaders, we're always looking for leaders to make the decisions for us, and that goes with government. It's so often that people will fall in line behind one figure and they will put these almost messianic traits on this individual to solve all of the world's ills. And I wonder if it's interesting because I think with a lot of these gurus, a lot of the sort of big, popular and famous ones that you and I have listened to and that probably other people have heard of, is that a lot of people come to them, I think, with those sorts of expectations of almost looking for a messianic figure to drag them out of things, and maybe to an extent they find that. But when you listen to what these people are talking about, their philosophy to it is to try and find the strength within yourself to overcome these things. And I think that tends to be one of these sort of universal, and we've described it as repackaging, but I feel like a lot of the time they're talking about you finding the solutions, you gaining the strength to overcome these things, and the mental strength and the mental sort of perspective to overcome these sufferings that we're subjected to all the time. So I don't know where I'm going with it, but I think it's an interesting dynamic that they almost seem to flip it on their head, because they're not trying, or they don't preach to be a messianic figure. They preach to be someone who helps you find yourself almost.
Yeah, but then people become so dependent on these people that even though they're saying, oh, just sort of take my teachings on board, it just becomes like a full-on dependency, and that's where it becomes sort of a negative experience. You need to always sort of maintain a balanced perspective on things, implement techniques that may help you, but don't follow one person. I mean, we're all human. I don't see why one human is born better than another. Or no. I think we're all the same. We're all looking for answers, but implement what helps you, and sort of don't idolize anyone. Don't make anyone into a god.
Well, that's it. And I think it's, again, one of the things I find kind of nice about some of these teachers is that they almost, what they're preaching almost isn't the fact that they should be the ones that you follow. And I know that's probably different for a lot of them, and I mean, there's also, a lot of the gurus in, the Hindu gurus and stuff like that seem to be very much like, because they have their whole sort of like followings, these mass followings and all of that. But yeah, I think, sorry, like you said, it is like you have to be open-minded, but you also have to be kind of mentally strong as well, so that you're not just being swept up with it. You're making a decision to follow it, and I mean, hopefully people can get value from these teachings and from these practices, but they just won't, I suppose, give themselves up to it.
Yeah, I think the more legitimate people you can sort of, I don't want to say follow, but find useful are people who are not trying to, you don't come across like they're selling you something all the time. They're selling you their method as being the one way to solve all your problems, but they're more of a tool that you can use rather than, the be-all solution to everything. If they're trying too hard to sell you something, you probably know that they're, not very trustworthy. Full of it.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah. No,
you're definitely right. Yeah. It's one, I guess, like the last point, I just remembered this. So this, I don't know if this might just sound kind of a bit as like a just sort of a random aside, but one thing I've certainly noticed, I don't know if, I mean, I'm not even sure if this is really a problem, but it's an interesting, I suppose, trend that I think a lot of the big famous gurus and even the most predominant ones today, or the most famous ones today, they're all men.
Yeah.
And it's because I've not really come across any. I've come across women who are very high up in with respect to some of these gurus, but I've never come across a woman guru. I don't know if you've ever encountered anything like that.
Well, maybe on some level it's to do with, maybe, I don't know, maybe people have some sort of subconscious sexism going on when it comes to them looking for spiritual teachers. But the only person that I've come across is Eckhart Tolle's wife. She's also sort of a spiritual leader. But yeah, you're right, the majority are male.
So it's just weird because I think I'm not sure if I like I see anything in that, but it's like it does with the questions of the power and stuff. There definitely does seem to be, especially with that tantra guy. It was certainly because there were a lot of in that episode of Unwell, there were a lot of women who were doing the teaching and leading these things, and maybe this is like a weird sexism thing, but it almost didn't seem like it was likely for them to be misusing that as much as it was for the man. And when it was the man, it was like, oh, I kind of know where this is going, because it's, he's this guy in this powerful position, literally talking about, I guess, a form of sexual healing. So it's like you can kind of see where it was going with that. And with a lot of the gurus in the 70s and stuff, it was all the sort of men ones creating these like harems, and I don't know. I'm not sure if there's anything in that, but
I guess maybe it's easier for men who want to take advantage of that position to do so. They're probably, I don't know really why.
No,
they're not more female spiritual leaders, but
it's a weird one.
It's a good question.
Yeah. Well, you never know. Maybe we're living in the age of WAP now, so.
I do. The new spiritual leaders. Cardi B.
But yeah, no. Shit. Well, we've been going for an hour. I don't know if you have anything more. I think I've rattled through my questions.
Yeah, I think we've covered everything pretty in a lot of detail. I mean, I've covered all the bullet points that I had down.
Shit, that's it. If I mean, this is always like a growing subject for me, because I'm always a bit like, I wouldn't say that I'm looking for it, but every now and then I dip my toes in. I'm like, oh, I'll give that a try. So, maybe I'll have you on when I have my first DMT experience from Kundalini.
You should stream it live on Instagram.
Just my eyes bugging back, and
you can become an Instagram influencer after that.
Nah, I'm done with all of that, man. It'll be on like some sort of like weird blockchain one.
Yeah. Some sort of modern day Steve-O or something.
Fuck. All right then.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if you do have any sort of like trippy experiences whilst doing anything, let me know. Let your viewers know.
Yeah, we'll have a roundup on the
Yeah.
when I have my first spiritual experience. We'll get Toby back on and we'll just
Yeah.
discuss it, break it down.
Is Adam still present in the modern day world, or has he left? Has he gone to a better place?
That's why my podcast just turns into some weird like
Day 3 in the Matrix.
yeah.
Where have all these shapes come from? There weren't any squares yesterday, but now they're gliding through the air.
Fuck's sake. Jesus, right. All right, let's wrap this up.
Yeah,
Thank
don't
you
get
for
to that
coming
level.
on.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to plug anything.
No.
I don't think anyone's plugged anything so far, but you're welcome to if you want.
I have nothing to plug.
Perfect.
I'm not
All
a
right. Huh?
guy. I'm no influencer. I'm just some guy.
You're just some guy.
Dude. Yeah.
That's
Just
the
some
point.
dude, you know.
That's the point. Just some dude can have a great perspective on an interesting topic. So go out and have some conversations and be careful out there in the weird world of Kundalini yoga. And let me know if you have a DMT experience.
Yeah,
All right.
let me know as well. Be interested to know.
All right. Peace out, everyone.